In this video, we're going to be doing an SEC tier list and power rankings for the 2025 college football season. The list is labeled as a post-spring list, but obviously the spring well in the rearview mirror at this point. We're like in late June at this point. I was really focused on a lot of other projects. I'll talk about that at the end of the video, but we'll finally, without further ado and without further delay, get into the SEC power rankings, how I'm feeling about every team, and putting them into tiers as well. So the tier is going to look familiar. It's going to be similar to every other conference we've done so far, which is the ACC and Big Ten, which starts in the top tier. SEC contention, teams that will actually contend for an SEC title. That's going to be a pretty exclusive group for a conference that has many top tier contenders as the SEC, where the lower tier teams just aren't going to have the same shot. Then we've got dark horses, teams that could potentially crash the party, actually be in that mix if a few things break really right for them. We've got our spoilers, teams that I think could spoil some of the top team seasons, but aren't likely to put together the complete year required to win the conference. Then we've got our bowl hopefuls, teams that will have their focus a little bit more on just making a bowl game. And then, of course, our rebuilding teams that are going to be likely rebuilding this year in a much rougher spot. And that's the tier that we'll start in at the start of this video. We start with the rebuilding tier. We've got Mississippi State and Kentucky. Not too much of a surprise to have these teams down here. Mississippi State coming off of a disastrous year one under Jeff Lebby. They go 2-10. They have a home blowout loss to Toledo. This year, it's going to be about finding ways to improve in non-conference, win a couple more games in the non-conference. They got a big home game versus Arizona State. They have a weird road game at Southern Miss as well. And then potentially finding a way to shock someone, beat someone in conference play. Just one conference win this year is a step in the right direction. They return more starters on defense this year and a decent amount of continuity, including the SEC's leading tackler from last year, and Isaac Smith. So there's lots of positivity and some things to get excited about. This is a decent team and a decent roster that I think would be a middling team in the Big 12 potentially, or at least would have that potential. I look for the offense this year to make more improvements. They were actually decent last year, but they lost some big transfers. They lost their wide receiver Kevin Coleman Jr. to Missouri. That was a big loss for them. So they'll look to replace those guys, hopefully have an effective offense. I love their running back room. They bring in the South Alabama transfer, Fluff Bothwell. They still have Devon Booth, who was primary back last year, all SEC returner. They're 16th in the power rankings, though. It's going to be a long journey back to relevance in the SEC for them, but I think Lebby could be the guy to do it. Up a tier, or not up a tier, but upper rank, I should say. We've got Kentucky also in this tier, under Mark Stoops. Really rough year last year. They ended up missing a bowl game and going 4-8. It looked really promising at the start, and you wondered if there was a formula there for success. They nearly took out Georgia. They did beat Ole Miss. This offseason, they kind of flushed a lot, but they bring back a solid amount of defensive continuity. They have 7 defensive returning starters from last season, and I'm pretty optimistic about them on that side of the football. They could be competitive. Offensively, they rebuilt their backfield again. It's a strategy they've tried again and again with mixed results. Sometimes it's been positive. Mostly it's been negative. Zach Calzada going to be their signal caller. It's a familiar name. Last time he was in the SEC, he wasn't very good. He went to the FCS ranks, built a name for himself at a Carter Word. Maybe he's got some upside for them this season. There's some things to like. Don't love what happened to their wide receiver room this offseason. They're going to be pretty inexperienced, not have a ton of depth there. We'll see what happens with Kentucky. They've got to get back to having their offensive line as a strength this year to have a chance at getting back on the right track, getting back to a bowl game, and that's why they're in at number 15. Jumping up a tier, we've got the bowl hopefuls. They are just 2 teams in this tier as well. We've got Vanderbilt and Arkansas. We'll start with Vanderbilt because it's a pretty simple story for the Commodores. On paper, they are the least talented team in the SEC once again. There's not a single team that they have a better talent roster than. The recruiting rankings are worse. The transfer portal rankings are worse. But they've got some intangibles, and they showed that last season. They had a road win at Kentucky. They upset Alabama. They got some really nice things done in conference play and really showed that they can be a force to be reckoned with. And Diego Pavia just is the engine that drives this team, and he could put them in another great position to make another bowl push, which would be a huge positive for Vanderbilt football, one that they absolutely need. There's still a lot of flaws and holes with this team. The talent roster is not there. Defensively, they did have some surprises along the D-line. They were surprisingly effective there, but overall, there's just a lot of holes in the secondary and second level of that defense that could come up and rear their ugly heads this year for them. It was just such a picturesque season, and it just feels like there's so many things that could go wrong for them. If Diego Pavia goes down at any point, that's a disaster for them. So we'll see what happens with Vanderbilt. They're 14th in the power rankings, and then one spot above them is 13th, and that is Arkansas. The Razorbacks this season bring back that high-flying, pretty potent offense that actually clicked under Bobby Petrino last year. They've got Taylon Green. They've got a nice transfer receiver in Omega Blake from Charlotte this season, and they keep a lot of continuity on this staff, and that's something to like about this team. But Last season, they weren't particularly great. They finished 3-5 in conference play. They kind of struggled whenever they ran into a top-tier opponent. They did pull off that upset versus Tennessee, which was nice to hang their hat on. But looking in 2025, in order to make that next step, they need Bobby Petrino to deliver another top-tier offense, and they just need that defense to really figure something out because there's not a lot that was working for them last season, and so they got to hope that the continuity helps them, and that's why Arkansas is at number 13. We make the leap to the next tier, which is going to be a bit of a more crowded tier. We've got the spoilers tier in the SEC. Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri, Auburn, South Carolina, all in this tier. And let's just get into it. We start with the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee actually going to come up pretty low in these power rankings. I'm going to put them at 12th, which I know is going to make some people upset. It's a team that made the playoffs last season, but the Volunteers had a rough offseason. They were already going to be in a bit of like a rebuilding or reloading year, if you're being optimistic as a Tennessee fan. And then they had the weird Nico drama happen this offseason. They bring in a guy that they didn't necessarily want to be their quarterback, but he's the guy they end up with, and Joey Aguilar, the former App State starting quarterback. We'll see how he gels in the system, but there are genuine flaws that we've seen in one-dimensionality with this offense recently. Tim Banks has gotten the defense a little bit more up to speed. They will have the playmakers on that side of the football that can keep them in games. They'll be a competitive team, no doubt. I expect them to make a bowl game pretty easily with their schedule they have, which is why they're not in the bowl hopefuls tier. I just don't know how they're going to find a way to get an edge in a really crowded and deep SEC this year with all of the drama they endured this offseason and also being in a pretty rough spot in terms of returning production. And then one spot above them at 11 is going to be Missouri. Missouri's going to be interesting, and this could age really poorly because the Tigers could be an excellent team this year with their manageable schedule. They have been gifted just an absolute gift with their schedule. I mean, they do not play a road game until October 18th, which doesn't feel legal, but somehow Missouri drew that in their schedule as well. Their road games aren't super difficult either. Vanderbilt and Arkansas and Auburn are their road games in SEC play. Also Oklahoma, which those are pretty solid ones to draw considering only one of those teams even finished above 500 last year, so that's decent. As far as their actual talent roster, they have decent returning production numbers. They did lose some key pieces defensively, but I trust the depth of their staff to turn in a solid season. I like some of the guys they landed in the portal. They bring in Ahmad Hardy. They bring in Kevin Coleman Jr., the aforementioned receiver from Mississippi State. They've got a new quarterback in Bo Perbula, so there's just a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. They've got the runway to make things work for them early in the year, but the jury is still out for me on Missouri football this year. They could win double-digit games pretty easily, even if things don't gel perfectly because of how beneficial their schedule is. So this one will pretty much guaranteed age poorly, but I tried my best not to let the strength of schedule affect my placement of these teams, and I'll touch on that a little bit more as we hit some other teams that have notably tougher schedules as well. But let's get to the next one, which is going to be the Ole Miss Rebels at 10th in my power rankings. Again, I think some people will get up in arms about this. The Rebels were an excellent team last year, but they also were sort of a window team. With all of the elite defensive talent they had, we saw their upside and their potential, and that's why it was so disappointing that they missed out in a playoff spot with some of those tough losses. And I'm confident that the Lane Kiffin offense will get rolling. They will instantly figure things out with all the new faces, with Austin Simmons likely being the starting quarterback, with their running back room that's deep, with their wide receiver room that's going to have guys step up. But it's on the defensive side of the football. I do not have confidence that they're going to have the same level of defensive play they had last season. They just lost so much NFL talent. You saw it in the draft. I don't think they'll effectively replace that this season. They'll still be solid. They'll still have plenty of upside and room to grow this year, but it's not going to be anything like last season's defensive front. That was so deadly. Let's get up to the number 9 spot as we near the top half of this power ranking, and that's going to be the Auburn Tigers. Auburn is a team that I really like a lot of the things they did this offseason. They had the second most freshman snaps in all of college football last season. They were an extremely young team, and those guys all getting another year to grow and mature with this team. I just really like that. I put a lot of stock into that. I think they have one of the best wide receiving rooms in the entire country. You've got Cam Coleman out there. You bring in Eric Singleton, and you bring in a guy like Jackson Arnold, who is the exact type of quarterback you take, you put in a great situation, he could absolutely thrive. He was in a very dysfunctional situation. His divorce with Oklahoma was probably needed, and I think he's going to be really helpful. I am so confident about DJ Durkin's defense this year. They have such a nasty defensive front. It's going to be one of the best in the conference, and I think Auburn will be up to the task on that side of the football. I do have some concerns. I have concerns in sort of the middle of that defense. At linebacker, there are questions, especially from last season, and obviously Jackson Arnold isn't a slam dunk to just be awesome right off the bat. Still some things that could go wrong for Auburn this year, but I do like them overall. Moving up 1 to 8, 8. This is the first team in the top half of the conference, still in that spoilers tier, though. We've got the South Carolina Gamecocks, and they've been some off-season darlings for some people. I've seen people putting them into the college football playoff. People love Lenore Sellers. Dark horse for the Heisman Trophy. I totally agree with that. He's a beast. They've got playmakers and potential playmakers across the board here. You got Nick Harbor, Mazeo Bennett Jr. So many big targets for Lenore Sellers to get comfortable throwing the ball to. They also have solid running back play. Razul Faison still has that weird eligibility stuff he's trying to navigate. If he's eligible, I'm confident in their offense. I'm confident in their O-line. That takes a big step forward in experience this year. It's defensively where there's a slight concern because of how good they were last season, how elite they were rushing the passer. Will they be able to sustain that? I think maybe we'll see. They bring in Dylan Stewart. They have Brian Thomas Jr. coming into town. Charlotte transfer Demon Clowney, trying to keep that up and keep what was good, but there is some relative inexperience, and there's a chance they take a step back in that department, and then a lot more issues could arise for this defense that weren't there last season. So that's my concern. I'm hoping they come out and do well. We'll see what they do out of the gate. If they start strong out of the gate, it's a really good omen for a team that usually finishes the season really strong under Shane Beamer. So that was kind of a long-winded tier. This next tier has just 3 teams. The Dark Horses tier, which is Florida, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. 3 teams that I'm feeling pretty good about, and I can confidently say I think these teams could win the SEC if things break right for them this year. And we start with the Florida Gators. Florida is one of those teams I was talking about that has a brutal schedule. You look at what they draw. They've got road games at LSU and Miami. They still have to play Florida State in the non-conference, which should be a better Florida State team than last year. They play Ole Miss. They play Georgia. They play Texas. They play Texas A&M. Nasty, nasty business from the schedule makers on the Florida Gators schedule this year. And yet, I feel great about them. They are 18th in returning production in the entire country. They bring back DJ Lagway, who has the potential to be one of the best signal callers in the country. They've got solid weapons at receiver for him. Their offensive line is loaded, has an All-American back at center with Jake Slaughter, and just guys all over the place. It's one of the best offensive lines in the country. Their D-line is going to be up to the task this year. They return so many guys that contributed last season on that side of the football. Yes, the defense was inconsistent. They did battle through injuries. They were the most injured team in the entire country last season, and they also played a ton of freshman snaps. And so I really like Florida this year. I think if they can stay healthy through that brutal schedule, they can still arise and do great things with their season. Dark horse team for the college football playoff. Absolutely they are. And dark horse might even be a little bit of a disrespectful word to use with the Florida Gators. Next up, and at number 6, I've got the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma last season had a complete disaster on the offensive side of the football. It was just completely horrible. I look at them this season. They still have that same defense that managed to rise above what was a horrible year and have a great year. And they bring in some transfer portal additions that make it even better, like Marvin Jones Jr. from Florida State. He gets out of a dysfunctional situation. They've got an all-SEC defensive end and R. Mason Thomas back, and David Stone comes back, a defensive tackle, giving them depth. He's one of those young guys that makes a really deep defensive line. And despite some losses like Danny Stutzman, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, there is so much to like about the center of this defense. The secondary as well, bringing back some all-conference players. They are in a great spot to have a great year on defense again. But then there's the offense that I think has so much upside, and this is what I like the most about this team. They bring in a quarterback in John Mateer that has genuine Heisman upside if things click for him. They bring in his offensive coordinator with him, Ben Arbuckle. They have Jaden Ott, a guy that, again, all conference upside if things pan out for him. And then a receiver. They had a ton of injuries last year. They reload in that department. The key hinge point will be, does that offensive line get up to speed? I think it has the potential to. And I think if it does in Ben Arbuckle's offense, the sky is the limit for the Sooners. They could have a phenomenal season this year. Sky high in Oklahoma. Don't think I could be higher on them than I am right now. And then that takes us to the team in the number 5 spot, Texas A&M. I think not enough people are talking about the Aggies. They are 6th in the entire country in returning production, but battered Aggie syndrome has infected the college football public. They don't trust Texas A&M, but I'm telling you, we've never seen a year 2 Mike Elko Texas A&M team with him at the helm, at head coach. A&M battled so many injuries late last season. They were also one of the most injured teams in college football last year, and you look at them, what they have, they've got certainty in quarterback with Marcel Reed. They've got Le'Veon Moss back at running back. They've got a studded cast of returners on the offense side of football, including Casey Concepcion from NC State, who has sky-high potential, Terry Bussey back from an injury, the O-line with tons of returning production, and then defensively, it's Mike Elko's bread and butter. They had inconsistency last year. I would chalk up a good deal of that to the injuries they faced. I think they're really going to come along. I love Tarian York and Scooby Williams. It's one of the best linebacking duos in the entire country, and it's going to be one of the best linebacking units in the entire country. I think that can lead lead a successful defense, and Texas A&M has the potential to be championship caliber this year. I have them as a top 10 team preseason. But at long last, we have made it to the top tier, which is SEC contention. We've got 4 teams up in this tier, and we'll start with the team that is in 4th, which is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs for me. For me, Georgia just showed a lot of uncharacteristic flaws last season, and they still managed to win the SEC. But if you look at the way their season played out, there were a lot more things that could have gone wrong for them. They were relying very heavily on the downfield passing game to pull them out of ugly games because their running game was so ineffective. And now they don't have Carson Beck. They're with a quarterback that Kirby Smart's much more comfortable with in Gunnar Stockton. But I'm worried that that's going to limit them more than it helps them this season. Defensively, they don't have the same depth that was so elite for so long that we love with that team. And I know this sounds pretty negative, but that's because this positioning for Georgia, due to the standard they've had for their program, is a little uncharacteristic. I'll talk a little bit about the things I like. They still obviously have an extremely high floor at the defensive front. They've got a ton of blue chip talent that is young and unproven, but guys like Elijah Griffin, Nashir Johnson, Joseph Jonah, I can't pronounce his last name, Ajonye. I hope that was at least close to right, but those are the types of guys that could become household names in a flip of a switch. And then with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, yeah, you're probably going to have a higher floor. You're going to let your talented players do the work. They also added some excellent skill players. Zachariah Branch coming in this offseason. They've got a deep wide receiving core. They've got Oscar Delp. They've got the tight ends. So there's definitely some upside for the offense as well. And with a guy like Nate Frazier running back, maybe they rediscover that offensive identity on the ground game this year. And if they do, they instantly become a national title threat, which they already are. If you're an SEC title contention, you're a national title threat already. Next up, we've got LSU at the number 3 spot. Tigers just above the Georgia Bulldogs this year, but it's for good reason. I am so sky high on this team. They have everything that I would want to see in a team that could contend to win a national title, and that includes a veteran returning quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. Let me know if that sounds familiar to LSU, with Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow basically being in a similar situation, coming back with the same play caller, all that stuff. On the ground, you've got Caden Durham, who broke out last season. They have one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire country with Nick Anderson, and Aaron Anderson in that receiving core. They've just got a lot of things to really like. And on the offensive line, that's a big question mark. And that's the biggest question mark for this team, because defensively, I think they're going to answer so many questions. In year 2 under Blake Baker, he did so many great things. They bring back Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks. They have a secondary that has all conference players all over it that they went and got through the transfer portal, like Mansour Delane. On the defensive front, they add Patrick Payton, the former all-conference edge from Florida State, which is a huge add for them as well. Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler, some other incoming transfers. There's a ton of things to like. It's really just that offensive line that is really depleted from last season. They've got to replace a lot of guys that were huge for them. I think they can, and obviously I'm projecting they will by having them this high on the list. They're gonna have to answer those questions, and I think they will. That's why I'm very high on LSU. I'm looking at that upside. The other 2 teams we got in here, we'll start with the Texas Longhorns. Texas, number 2 on the SEC Power Rankings, and Texas, another year where they can win a national title under Steve Sarkisian. He has proven this program can reload rather than having to rebuild. They're 103rd in returning production. They just had a ton of guys get drafted, but I've got trust in Arch Manning at quarterback. I've got trust in this running back room with guys coming back off of injuries like CJ Baxter. I've got trust in this deep wide receiving core that should be an asset for them again. The O-line has a bit of a question mark here as well, but I trust Texas's development that they've shown that they've had recently. They should be able to effectively replace the guys they lost this offseason, like Kelvin Banks, and be excellent there as well. The defense, it's deep. It's got the names. They bring in some transfers like Cole Brevard from Purdue that I have a ton of faith will really step up for the Longhorns this year. So it's a team that I think is just going to absolutely reload. And I think you could argue Texas is in a similar boat to Georgia this year, where there's some question marks, but I suppose I just have a little bit more faith in the upside the signal caller gives them and Arch Manning. I'm an Arch believer this season. So Texas going to be in a position to compete for a national title once again, and that takes us to the number 1 team in my SEC Power Rankings, which is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I know some of you might be saying, it's not 2022, or it's not, Nick Saban's not there anymore. What are you doing putting Alabama number 1 in the SEC Power Rankings? I have the utmost faith that Alabama will return to the top of the SEC standings and be an elite team this year. They will be a threat to win a national title. They'll be right in that picture. Yes, they're coming off of a rough year. Yes, they lost 4 games last season, including that bowl loss, but I think people underestimate the amount of adverse circumstances that Kalen DeBoer inherited when he took over at Alabama, including not being able to go get anyone from the transfer portal until the spring window because of how late that movement happened, having a ton of players stripped off of his roster, basically being forced to keep players that he wouldn't want on his roster. This year specifically, he gets Ryan Grubb back, his offensive coordinator that he wanted from the start that he didn't have last season, who helped him succeed at Washington. They have one of the deepest defensive staffs in the entire country, arguably I'd say the deepest, actually, with some confidence. And I just love all the weapons they have back. I think one of Ty Simpson or Austin Mack is going to step up and be a household name at quarterback this year in that system. They've got Jam Miller, or they don't have Jam Miller this season. They do have Jam Miller this season. I was thinking of the guy that went to Michigan, Justice Haynes. So they do have Jam Miller at running back, which I really like. Ryan Williams at wide receiver. Obviously, they got the depth there. They've got the talent as well. And on the defensive line, they returned several players that have All-American potential that could have gone to the NFL draft. I'm looking at LT Overton. I'm looking at Tim Keenan. There's a lot of things to really like on that side of the football. I think they're just going to come further and further along, and I just think people underestimated the adverse circumstances they faced last year. Kalen DeBoer usually does more with less, and last season, he wasn't able to do it because of all of the weird things that happened and the weird makeup of his roster. This year, he's going to do more with more. Alabama will be in that national title picture, and it's not going to surprise me when they are. So they're number one on my SEC power ranking. So there you have it, my complete SEC power rankings and tier list. Video came out a little long-winded. I went a little bit more in depth with these teams, but we'll see if you guys like it. You'll have to let me know down in the comments what you think of the video. Looking to get back on track with these long-form videos as we get closer to the season, and I'll plan on continuing to do them. We'll do the one where we pick every single week. But yeah, I was really busy making my college football preview magazine, which is available now. You can get the physical version if that's something you want. It's $25, but the digital version is for free. I made it for free for everyone because I know how much you guys love college football, and for all the things you guys do for me to give me this platform, I'm just blessed and grateful to even be able to talk about this stuff. So I'm going to link that down below. If you want to go collect your free copy, feel free to. It's going to link to the storefront, so both will be available there. But I'm very excited. I'm going to have those actual physical copies on hand in a couple of days and start shipping those out to everybody that's pre-ordered. If you pre-order in the next 2 days, you might be able to get caught in that first shipment and get your magazine before July. So I appreciate all the support you guys have shown me. Glad to be back on track and making long-form content again. And that's all I got from the video for you guys today. I will see you guys later this week. We'll probably do the Big 12 power rankings later this week and then start to jump to some other preseason topics, maybe a little bit of college football 26 talk as that game releases as well. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you guys later this week.